Hello, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. This is the third. This is crazy. We're almost done with August. It's kind of crazy. I have a lot of stuff. I don't know if a lot of stuff I want to do, but basically, I still need to finish my poetry book. So that's a little update. I've gotten my edits back. I need to go through the edits and edit my poetry book, and I also need to set up some stuff on my Amazon, like self-publishing site thing. But yeah, that's a little tiny update. And also, of course, as I'm setting up, my AC is not on. Everything's quiet besides my dryer. And of course, it comes on right as I'm done setting up, which I've had it on when I recorded before, so it's like whatever. But yeah, hope y'all are doing well. August is almost over. It's crazy. We're going to talk about a docu-series, technically. I put documentary as a genre, but it's called Shiny Happy People, Duggar Family Secrets. It was released June 2nd of this year. It's on Prime Video if you want to watch it. So I'm going to give a synopsis, and I'm going to get into my review of it, and we're going to talk about like a lot of details that just really, I guess it shocked me, but it wasn't surprising though. But here it goes. The synopsis is a limited docuseries exposing the truth beneath the wholesome Americana surface of reality TV's favorite mega family, the Duggars, and the radical organization behind them, the Institute in Basic Life Principles. I'm going to be calling it IBLP for the rest of the video, so that's what that means. As details of the family and their scandals unfold, we realize that part of an insidious, much larger threat already in motion, with democracy itself in peril. So yeah, that's the synopsis, which I feel like definitely describes it very well. It was 4 parts. They were about 30 to 40-ish minutes each part. I don't think there was like an hour part. There might have been one that was almost, maybe, but I can't remember. But yeah, I will say it was very, I don't know if enthralling is the right word, but it's very consuming. Like, you're like, whoa, look at all this stuff. But I'm going to go through my pros and my cons and my overall opinion and share my own religious experiences. So yeah, we're going to get into that. My first pro is the Jill Duggar and her husband and all the other former members of IBLP, and including her cousin Amy. I forgot Amy's last name. I guess Amy would be a Duggar, but she did get married, so her last name is like different now. But yeah, they had a lot of people. They had experts. I'm going to include the experts in there. They had experts. They had people who, were fundamental Christians. They were like against fundamental Christianity. That's what I'm trying to say. But yeah, I liked hearing the first-hand accounts from everyone in the docuseries. Even though a lot of it was bad, obviously, and it was very sad and emotional hearing the terrible things that they had to go through. It was also very wonderful seeing how they overcome being in the cult. I'm just going to call it a cult. And taking charge of their lives. It was very comforting to know they were all trying to help others get out of the cult by sharing experiences, not just in the documentary, but also some of them had a YouTube channel. Some of them had, they were on other forums. I forget the site, but they talked about a specific site. There was like once you get out of IBLP, it was like a support site. That's what it was. I forgot the name of it though. It was very nice to see they didn't want people to suffer like they had, and even though, because of the statute of limitations, they didn't get the justice in a legal way, at least they know that they are like vindicated because they got out and they help others, as well as they did not go back into the cult and continue the cycle of control and abuse. So Bill Gothard, he's the leader of IBLP. Of course, he was very abusive, mainly sexual abuse and sexual harassment. And unfortunately, they did take him to court, but they were not able to prosecute because of statute of limitations, unfortunately. And he tried to countersue, but it got thrown out, which was good because it's like, you do all these horrible things, you're trying to countersue? I think he was trying to countersue for like defamation or something. But I'm just gonna give you a little spoiler alert. He did end up getting kicked out of IBOP, so it's like they kicked you out. So I mean, they obviously think you did something at least. Otherwise, they would have kept you there, or they probably, which most likely they were like, oh, there's too much controversy, so they wanted him out of there. And then my second pro is the background of IBLP and the Duggar family. The Docuseries did a great job at going in detail about IBLP's history and the goals of the cult. Also, how the Duggars got into the cult and the ways in which they brought it to the mainstream, like through their show. And I think Michelle Duggar, the mom of the family, I felt like she was young and vulnerable, and wanted something to rely on / believe in. I forgot how old they were when they met. They weren't very old. I want to say they were like 16, 14, something along those lines. Something in that range. They were very young. I think they got married in their early 20s, so like, you know, not very much older than like mid 20s basically. And so also, and Jim Bob, I think he wanted to feel powerful and dominant because I think his childhood was definitely rough, and I think his dad or either stepdads were abusive, unless that was somebody else, but I think he probably did have to deal with abuse as well as a child, so he seemed like he wanted power and control. And it's definitely a cult that's great for men who want to take total control over their families, because they have this umbrella of protection system, like where God's at the top, and then the husband / dad, and then the wife, and then the kids are at the bottom. So if anything is, like, if you don't obey your husband, then bad things will happen to you, and then, you know, it trickles down. I like that they went into great detail about the rules of IBLP, which they were a lot, and their own experiences, and it was definitely a breeding ground for abuse to keep happening and people to get away with it. It's definitely, has a foolproof system of, like, if you're sexually abusive or physically abusive, they definitely give you excuses for that. My third pro and the final pro was the coverage of Bill Gothard, who was the leader and the creator of IBLP. With every other detail in the documentary, they covered him extensively. I don't remember how he started IBLP though. One of the problems about him that stuck out to me, which he had many problems, he was never married or had kids, but was telling his members, you need to have kids and have a soccer team worth of children, which was interesting. And I saw some people theorize that they have like a monitoring system so that I guess you're not watching adult films or anything like that. And then probably also have, you have a wife and kids that keep you in check as well. And he probably didn't want that. That's one of the theories. And that he wanted to be abusive in peace, which does make sense. I have another theory, which I agree with that one too, is that technically he was God in the cult, so he's the one to be praised like by himself. That's what I'm thinking. And like Jesus was never married or had kids, which some people online did point out he might have made himself like Jesus as a sacrificial leader. But he's an evil, greedy, abusive man, and although the IBLP, I think in the documentary they had one scene where they literally had to drag him out of an event because he was causing a scene. They still use his teaching, so it's not really, it doesn't really make a difference, I don't, to me, because it's already spread. There are all these training centers, there are all these churches, there are all these people involved already. So, it doesn't really make a difference. Which, I mean, I'm not sure about, all cults, but usually, if a cult leader, I think, dies, or, I never heard of a cult leader, leaving. But I don't know 100%, but it does seem like if a cult leader dies, at least, the cult is pretty, under wraps or like done pretty much. Um, but it could be still people, you know, in the cults like around the world, but just the leaders passed away, which could be a thing, you know. Okay, let's go to the cons now. So Jill said that she wished like the molestation by Josh, that he molested her and some of her other sisters and some other like neighborhood children, other neighborhood girls, hadn't come out in the public. And I know this is like a tricky subject to like criticize, and I understand it was a traumatic event for her and her sisters and his other victims. But I also think it was great to not only expose Josh, even though he was a child, but their parents, because their parents didn't really do anything to help their son in any way. They just basically sent him to like this place, IBLP center, where you just build things for free, you know, free child labor. You know what I mean? So they didn't really teach him anything. And since sex is like a taboo topic thing in the cult, there's like no explanation of inappropriate touching because, you know, they have like they put shame on sexual thoughts or being sexual before you're married. So it seems, unfortunately, inevitable that kids will get curious and abuse will happen, unfortunately. And I know she wishes she never defended him, but I know she was trying to protect her family at the time, so I don't really like blame her for that. Now, my last con is Jim and Bobby Holt. They were like a couple that knew Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar and like hung out with them and stuff. So I have learned since the docuseries that Bobby has filed a restraining order against Jim, so that makes them even more sketchy to me because like what was going on in your life? And I didn't like that they seemed to know more about Josh's, like how he molested his victims, but didn't really seem to do anything to get justice for the victims. Although I know it's not entirely up to them, and he did go with Jim Bob to go to the police with Josh, but unfortunately the police officer on the case was friends with Jim Bob, so you know he just gave him a talking to, which is not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to press charges, put them in the jail, put him under the jail. Well, now he's in jail for like 12, 20. He's in jail for a long time, basically now because of, I can't say the whole word. I don't know if I'll get a strike for this, but it's CP. If you don't know what CP is, it's child corn, but instead of a C, it's a P. So inappropriate materials on his computer involving children, which is horrifying. Number one, the fact that people, first of all, that people will hurt children in that way to make those things, and then that people watch those things where children are being hurt. It just makes me so sad. And he has children of his own. This is just crazy to me. Oh, I think they said he would have 20 years of probation, but I think he's doing like 12, somewhere in that range of years, 10, 12, something like that. A long time, you know. And it's just so sad. And it just makes me so sad. I also felt like they kind of acted like they were so much better, but they were still in IBLP or are still in it. I'm not 100% sure if they left or not. I don't think they really said whether they left or not. So, you know, they might have also perpetuated the same type of abuse and other controlling ways. So, of course, what Josh has done is horrible, but who is to say they haven't done horrible things as well? Just because they didn't mention it in the documentary. So those are my cons, and I'm going to give you my overall opinion. My overall opinion is, although every detail about IBLP cult was horrifying and sad, I had no idea about it before the docuseries. I just thought the Duggars were like maybe some extreme Christians, but not, you know, but nothing like too weird. Although I feel like, I guess there can be different levels, but I definitely feel like there's some Christians that are not in cults that also don't believe in birth control. I don't get it. I don't get it, but that's their prerogative. Um, but yeah, however, it was much worse than I originally thought. I just thought they were maybe just super religious, but I didn't realize how much worse it actually was. I will say I enjoyed everyone's stories about growing up and how badly things were because everyone was open and vulnerable. Of course, I did feel bad for them, and of course, them leaving was a great feat. Though, and warning others about the cult was a great move. I like that this docuseries was short, so it was a good like binge watch for binge watchers. It's only 4 episodes, and I enjoyed learning about cults in general. So definitely was an eye opener, just in case I meet people like this. Cause you never know. Cause I remember when they were talking about how the cult came to be. It was like in the 1960s, and people were like, there was war, there was unrest, civil unrest. People were trying to find like meaning. So this was like a great like opportunity to grab people and bring people into these ideas, and maybe to them this was gonna be like a stability. You know what I mean? And even like looking at the reasoning, I was like, and I'm like, would I be able to be convinced to be in a cult? Hopefully not. But I mean, I can get why people join, but of course, there's a lot of abuse and controlling tendencies, and it's not good. That the other sister, one of the other older sisters, Ginger, wrote a book about separating faith from fear because she said that, being in the cult, it was just all about fear. Like, you're afraid to do this, you're afraid to do that. And so she, distanced herself from that, but she still is religious though. So I give it an 8 out of 10. Even though I did like that it was short, it gave a lot of information. I still wanted to know more about IBLP and what the other Duggars would do once they get older. I just watched a TikTok the other day, which is so funny because I might have liked a video about shiny happy people like review or like a revelation about it on TikTok. So then this other thing came up talking about all the Duggar siblings. Obviously Josh is in jail, and then it was talking about some of the other siblings. I'm not sure if all of them have the older ones at least have gotten out of IBLP, but I will say at least Josh Duggar has 6 kids, so they might have still been in the cult. But the other sisters at least don't have as many kids. They have like 3, 2. I don't think more than 3. And like the other older brother or whatever, I think he only has 2 right now. I don't know if they're gonna keep going or if he still believes in not using birth control. So yeah. And of course they were the minors. They were like, I think the last 4 children of like the 20 or something. I think they're all girls, so that's very concerning. Especially because the parents, I'm pretty sure, are still like in the cult and still talk about it and stuff. So yeah, that's what I thought about the docuseries. I really enjoyed it. Besides, of course, it's sad. People are being abused and in many different ways. Emotional, physical, sexual, probably financial, because if you having a bunch of kids, you're probably not working. You know what I mean? And also with their education, you're being homeschooled. Oh, one of the interesting things, I forgot to put this on my list of like shocking things. These are shocking things, but they're not like 100% surprising. You know what I mean? Was that this homeschool movement might have, and like white evangelicals in general might have wanted to move towards homeschooling because of integration. So they were against integration. So they were like, oh, we're just going to keep our kids at home. which is like crazy. Like, you're that racist that you just really don't want to have your kids go to school with black kids. I mean, granted, if you're racist, you don't have any logic. So, there's nothing up here. Just hate. Yeah. So, I'm going to talk about the shocking things that I heard in the documentary. Discipline wasn't limited to kids, so also wives could be disciplined. And one of the women who left, she was like a wife, and I think she only had 4 or 5 kids, so she didn't have too many, but yeah. So it's not just limited to the children. You can also be punished. You can also be spanked. You can also be like, put in the corner. I think she mentioned like, there was like a corner. I forgot what the official thing is called in the cult, but it's like you go to the corner, like a timeout, but it was called something else. But wives apparently can suffer this fate too. And another thing was, it was so sad. The wife, when she got married, like her wedding night, she said she got raped 3 times, which is really sad because, and I don't know, she didn't give details, which she doesn't have to, but I don't know if IBOP, like, they just assume that, oh, you're my wife. Probably they assume you're my wife, I'm gonna do whatever I want to you, unfortunately. Even if you're not in the mood, even if you don't want it, which is sad. Speaking of rape/sexual assault, the next shocking thing was it's blamed on the victim, which is not 100% surprising. And they also had this passage in their text where it's like, if you don't call out to God while it's happening, then it's your fault also. So it could be your fault for just being you, even though you're covered head to toe, which, of course they enforce, you don't wear pants, you don't do this, you don't wear that. It's still your fault, which is crazy. But then they say you should call out to God. And I'm not saying God won't do anything. But what is that supposed to do, honestly? Because if you're a rapist, you just gonna keep going. I don't know. I guess they figured if you call out to God, God will stop it, which God's not on earth. So I don't know what they were expecting, The next point is just abuse. Abuse from home, abuse in the training camps, abuse everywhere. Like, one of the former members said when she was a child, she was at this one training center, and the umbrella of authority, or whatever it's called, I'm just calling it umbrella of authority, it doesn't really also have to mean just the man or men. Like, if somebody's older than you, and you're both women, the older person has the authority over you. So, because this one woman talked about a story where she was wearing a heel, and she said it was like that big on her tennis shoes, and one of the instructors at the training camp didn't like it, so she locked her in the prayer room for like days, which I'm assuming means without food or any bathroom breaks or anything like that. They didn't go into detail, but I'm gonna assume that was the conditions. And then Bill Gothard's brother, I forgot his name, was already doing abusive stuff, so then, like, sexually abusive stuff, so then Bill Gothard sent him to like a different training camp, which they said, there's not really like consequences, like nobody's really there to check you. But when he was getting in trouble at one training center, he sent him to another that had even less supervision than the other one, to just let him do whatever. But eventually the brother got the boot, and then Bill Gothard got the boot. And it was just so sad listening to the women talk about how he was abusive to them. But yeah, like I said, I think I mentioned earlier in the video, there was one incident where they had to like take him out, like physically get security to escort him off the premises of some conference or something. The training camps, which is, just free labor, just kids building stuff, just free child labor, and, and once again, child abuse, because, you're not really getting supervised, people just doing whatever they want. Oh, and then the Duggar children, which is a surprise. I mean, it's shocking, but not surprising. None of them got any money from the show. None. Zero. And then Jill said if she wanted to get money, she had to sign another contract with her dad, which was like a lifetime contract if you wanted to get money. And she was like, nah, I'm not trying to do all that. And then there were all these things with these different contracts and all these, very invasive things that they had to do. Of course, reality show, it's very invasive in general. You know what I mean? Oh, they had a blanket play thing. So what they would do was they would have kids lay on a blanket and then put something they wanted outside the blanket, and if they tried to reach for it, they would smack the baby, and basically it was like to break their will and stop them from being rebellious. So from birth they're training you, to stay in line and stay in, under the control of the cult and what they want. Oh, and also Michelle, when she would do her soft voices, Michelle Duggar, that was also a tactic because, for women, they want them sweet, docile, basically like childlike, which is crazy. And also, and I think also for women, you're supposed to be, you're not the top of the authority, so you can't just, you can't be yelling and stuff because, that's not what you're supposed to be doing because you're under the man, under God, Oh, with the umbrella of authority. There we go. And the last thing that shocked me was that Jim Bob was running for office while Josh was on trial for the child inappropriate materials case. Like, he really thought he was going to win when his son's on trial for that. That's crazy. So, for the final part, I want to share some weird experiences I've had with religion. I was in a cult for a short time, apparently. I don't remember much about it, but I do remember they wanted us to write down our sins and share it with everyone, which I want to say I don't think me and my friends did it, but I think we went there and were like, hey, we don't really feel comfortable talking about it. And I think after that we probably left. So that was like my brief encounter with the cult. I did not have any more significant that I can remember instances of like being in a cult. I also have never been in an MLM, so that's great. So I avoided two so far. Hopefully I'll keep avoiding them. Two, basically cults, because I feel like MLM is a cult as well. We had a ceremony in front of my church as a teenager to announce that we were all going to keep our virginities till marriage. And when I think about it as an adult, you're a child standing in front of your whole church, which includes adults. At least for me, I'm so glad I did not experience any kind of abuse or, sexual harassment in the church, but I know a lot of people have, and I just feel like that kind of ceremony is just like bait for like predators to be like, oh, you're waiting to get married. Let me see. Yeah, no. So that was very weird to me. Like looking back on it, speaking in tongues, and one of my family members wanted me to speak in tongues in front of them. They do say God is supposed to reveal what you're saying when you speak in tongues, but I don't know what I was saying. So maybe he does. I still consider myself a Christian, but I'm definitely not very hardcore about it. Not like as much as I used to be, you know what I mean? Very loosened up, you know what I mean? I still do Bible study and, stuff like that, but I still pray, but, I'm not over the top with it, you know what I mean? And speaking of like over the top, I've been fainted on, when you get into the Holy Spirit and you're really overwhelmed, you faint. Somebody fainted on me when I was a child. So those are just some of my experiences with religion. I do not go to church anymore. I probably will not ever go to church anymore. And I will not make my children go either. And just for me personally, even though I still am in still read the Bible, still pray. You know, I it's like sometimes you want to explore other things, which not saying I couldn't, but it's also like they talked about in the Duggar like documentary, like the fear of like, well, what if this I try something else and this what I originally was doing was the right religion, which I know people. I think when I was looking up like stuff on this documentary online, people were like, well, how do we know which one's the right one? We just gotta die and see. So, I mean, we just gotta die and see. I know it's not really helpful, but it's kind of like the truth. But yeah, if you watch the documentary, or docu-series, let me know what you thought of it. Give me your thoughts on religion in general if you want. And I will see you all next week.